goals that have historically and disproportionately impacted the communities that we advocate for and alongside with. And some of these communities are working class communities and frontline and fence line communities on the precipice of oil drilling operations. Addressing these systems will not only externally, but also internally will allow us to grow into an organization that is well educated and well primed to be a true ally in advocating for environmental justice. And this program is really going to be a way for Fossil Free California to center our values around the intersectionality of divestment and environmental justice more broadly. So I thank everybody for attending tonight and spending your evening with us. Let's introduce our panelists for the evening. I will go ahead and start. So my name is Manjari Majumdar, she, her pronouns. I am 24 years old and I have a background in electoral communications and labor communications, and I started in environmental justice in this divestment work just this past year, and I have been loving every single minute of it. These are my people, and this is where I want to be. I will pass it to Denisha.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Denisha Jordan. She, her are my pronouns. I am 52 years young, and I am an educator and a member of United Teachers Los Angeles. And we've been doing work both within our union and statewide on divestment and climate justice. And I will pass it to Jenn.
Greetings. Great to be here with you all. My name is Jenn Biehn. I use the pronouns she, they. I'm 76 years old. I've been a member of Fossil Free California since 2017, where we're working to divest the $15 billion in fossil fuels from my CalSTRS pension fund. Within Fossil Free, I helped create the Collaborating for Climate Justice team, which supports organizations and joins protests fighting for environmental justice throughout California. And I have taught classes in transforming white privilege on the path to racial justice and equity to the predominantly white folks who make up Fossil Free California, so that we can skillfully and respectfully support and work with people of color within our organization, with Youth versus Apocalypse, and with environmental justice organizations working for climate change. And I'll pass it to you, Bre'Asia.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Bre'Asia. I go by Bree. I'm 17 and I attend Customer in Oakland. I started working with environmental justice things in like 2022, I believe, or probably before then. Within those couple of years up to now, I've done a lot, such as by coordinating groups with middle schoolers and high schoolers and picking them all the way down to LA. And while we're in LA, we work with CalSTRS on trying to get a bill called SB 252 passed. And that bill was trying to get CalSTRS to divest from fossil fuels. And right now we are working on going on to being statewide, and I'm currently involved in two different groups, one being YVA, which is Youth versus Apocalypse, another one being Fossil Free California. I'll pass it to Louise.
Thank you, Bree. Hey, everybody. My name is Luis Martinez. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm 27. I'm from Wilmington, California, in Los Angeles. We're an environmental justice community, and I've been a longtime grassroots organizer in environmental justice for quite some time now. I've also done mutual aid organizing in regards to delivering food and resources to unhoused community members. And I really learned a lot about organizing from being in that space, but also from being a long-term member of Communities for a Better Environment and their youth program. I really grew up on their youth program in high school, and I even interned for them when I was in college. And so I really learned a lot of my community organizing skills from Communities for a Better Environment. And now with Fossil Free California, I work with my peers, retired peers, folks like Bre'Asia from Youth versus Apocalypse, to really put pressure on the CalPERS and CalSTRS board to divest from the fossil fuel industry, since they're some of the top investors in fossil fuels in the nation, with over $15 billion collectively invested into an industry that pollutes my community and that risks the pensions of retired folks and workers. So I'll go ahead and pass it back to you, Manjari.
Thanks, Luis, and thanks everybody for sharing a bit of your stories with us. I am sure we'll hear a little bit more throughout the night, but I am super excited to jump into questions right away. So the first two questions I have for us will help us kind of ease into the complex conversation around successful cross-generational leadership. And they will also give us some insight as to why these amazing panelists went into organizing in the first place. So for the first question, I want to hear from one of our youngest panelists, Luis, and one of our elders, Jenn. And the reason for that is it'll be really interesting to see the similarities and differences in their answers across the age gap they share. And Bre'Asia and Denisha, obviously feel free to chime in if you want to answer this too. But for Jenn and Luis, what are some dreams you have for the world? Let's start with Jenn.
Oh, thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a great question, Manjari. Thank you. My biggest dream, is that we co-create communities of belonging across the generations. So important to have that sense of belonging, and that we create communities of belonging where we respect and reach across our differences. And also where we recognize our interdependence. We are interdependent with one another. We need each other. And where we also engender both and thinking, not either or thinking. Communities where we feel a deep sense of belonging, where we take care of each other, help each other, inspire each other, and work together for the good of the whole. My dream is also that we create a world where everyone feels held with love and respect, where everyone has food and housing, feels peace and safety, where everyone feels they can grow their skills, their creativity, their ability to contribute. And most importantly, I think, is we as human beings learn and experience deeply that we're interdependent and interconnected with Mother Earth and all her beings. Two-leggeds, many-leggeds, those that crawl beneath the earth, fly in the sky, and swim in the waters, the plants and the trees rooted in the earth, as well as all of the elements, minerals, water, earth, fire, air, that we are truly interdependent, and that we need to live in reciprocity with Mother Earth and all her beings, giving and receiving as the indigenous throughout the world have lived for centuries. My dream is that we lead with love and not with hate, and that diplomacy becomes our tool to resolve differences, and that those who fight wars, who create and allow violence and discrimination in all its forms, and let hunger and lack of housing go unaddressed, that these folks, who also accumulate wealth at the expense of others, that they too shift from me first thinking to and all thinking, and that they too experience their oneness with Mother Earth. My dream is that we create a world where communities of color don't experience fracking in their neighborhoods. A world where we don't fear wildfires, floods caused by climate change, where we breathe clean air, where our food is not wrapped in plastic, where we ride fossil-free public transit from Bay Area to Los Angeles. And my dream is that we all share the urgency of the climate crisis we're facing, that we work hard together to support environmental justice and live in respectful reciprocity with Mother Earth. And as a dreamer, I believe each moment holds unlimited possibilities. Pass it along to you, Luis.
Thank you, Jen. Yeah, so some of my dreams for the future. As I was mentioning earlier, I'm from Wilmington, California, and Los Angeles, and my community is predominantly a low-income Black and Brown community. And historically, we have been really on the front lines of fossil fuel pollution in regards to oil refining and neighborhood oil drilling. And my dream for the future of my community and others like it is that one day we will kick the polluters off of our community, get them out of our neighborhoods so that they are no longer polluting our air and our lungs, because we've really suffered a lot of health impacts as a result of refining and neighborhood drilling. And that will really replace those things, replace those impacts, and remediate that land with community-led resources. Community-led resources in the forms of community gardens, senior centers, more schooling, more housing, after-school centers, resilience centers, and resources that will really allow my community and others like it to become autonomous and to really allow us to lift ourselves out of poverty. And so that is a huge dream that I have for the future for my community and communities like it throughout the state. And that's what really gets me up every single morning and excited to organize and ready to fight against fossil fuel pollution, is to fight for a better future and a fossil-free future for my community and for the state.
Oh my gosh, thank you, Luis and Jen. It's interesting. I feel like you both said the same things in different ways. Jen, you were very poetic about your dreams, and Luis, you were very pragmatic. And I feel like both of you are essentially saying we need to do better for our communities. It's okay to ask for better, and we can achieve better living conditions if we all work together. So, I think that is a very positive question, and conversely, it's very important now more than ever to recognize and thus legitimize the very real threats that we face because of climate change and because of systemic injustice and et cetera. And these threats are also a big reason for people to go into or stay in organizing, kind of like Luis mentioned. And Bre'Asia and Denisha, I'm wondering from y'all, what are some fears that you have for the world based on what you're seeing currently? I know that y'all have done many different types of organizing, and so I think you have a lot of insight on this question. Bre'Asia, why don't you start?
Yeah, thank you. So I have a lot of fears about the world, especially when it comes to environmental justice. I'll just start from when I first joined an environmental justice group. I think my biggest fear then was that people would not understand how important it is that we make things right with the earth that we live on, because we only get one earth, and I feel like if we don't treat it how it's supposed to be treated, then it will eventually like not be here anymore. And tying into that, with me only being 17, I feel very like afraid for my future. I'm worried that when I get older, considering the fact that other people in here has already lived their childhood and they're like a young adulthood, I feel like I won't have the same chance to do so because I wouldn't have like a good quality earth to be on anymore. And then I think another one of my fears is that considering the fact that I am so young, and using an example, whenever I went to my CTA meetings in LA, a lot of older people don't really understand when a lot of younger people come into a room and they're just talking about why you need to divest, this, and third. They don't really get why we're doing it. And so I think my main big issue is the fact that adults won't realize why we're doing what we're doing until it's too late. I'm worried that by the time I'm like 20 or 25, then adults are going to start dying out and they're going to be wondering, well, why didn't we do anything? I'm It's like, we tried to tell you. So yeah, I think my biggest worry, to like kind of sum it up, is that people are going to wait to the last minute to actually want to make a change. And I hope that it happens before then, because I've worked so hard to try to get the word out to people, not even just within CTA, but within my own school, my own environment, and my own community. I've tried to get the word out, and I've tried to educate people out to why this is such a big issue and why it needs to be dealt with. And I could pass it to Denise.
Thank you, Bre'Asia. I think for me, what's most telling is the number of deaths that are caused by fossil fuels each year, and how that number and what studies don't really show is who's dying. Like as Bre'Asia mentioned, and then Luis also, a lot of these fossil fuels are in the urban communities that look like me and Luis and Bre'Asia. And the way it's impacting as an educator, I see firsthand, like I've been teaching for 22 years, and just the amount of students that have been diagnosed with asthma has increased, and it continues to increase. Even adults suffering from asthma that weren't diagnosed and didn't have any issues as children. Typically, it's been something that you have had from early on, but even later on in life, adults are being diagnosed with asthma. We also have issues with not just asthma, but it can be linked to autism. spectrums of autism, which we're seeing a lot in the schools as well, and then absenteeism, all these things that impact our students. And just thinking, building on what Bre'Asia was saying, like, I do think about the future, and maybe not in my lifetime, but I have a daughter who I'm hoping will give me grandkids soon. And so I think about their future and what this world is going to look like for them. And then if I could just, I know I'm looking in the room and I see that there's a lot of folks that have lived beautiful, long lives. Think back to when you were Bre'Asia's age at 17. And I always feel like when we watch television, for example, or we see movies and things, I think there really are predictors of the future. And like going back to the Jetsons, I don't know if anyone remembers the Jetsons cartoon, but how we were, look at us now, like we're on Zoom. We're seeing each other through a camera and we're talking to each other. And there were things that we couldn't even imagine. We have self-driving cars now. Like I see them on the street. And so I see movies where this planet that we're living on is uninhabitable. In whatever scenario you want to describe, but you can't ignore the extreme temperatures that we've been having, the extreme weather, the air pollution, and the way it impacts species and all of those things that are going on. So I really do, and I really am concerned about this planet being able to sustain itself in the future.
Thank you, both of you, for your answers to that extremely scary question. Yeah, it seems like we all have very deeply existential fears of what this Earth is looking like now and what it will look like in the future and the path that we are on. And it seems like environmental justice, climate justice, fossil fuel divestment especially, is kind of an evergreen just cause with tenets of it just being passed from generation to generation. And now that we do have tools like Zoom to better connect us, what we need to do is figure out how to strengthen our coalition such that we see results and we are victorious and the Earth is inhabitable and sustainable and we all can live good lives. And so I guess that brings us to our question of the evening, which is, what is it going to take to create a truly intersectional, multi-generational environmental justice movement? And this is a discussion that I want to hear between all of our panelists. So I would love to start with Denisha, if you have any thoughts on this. I'm putting you on the spot, but that's the job as a panelist.
Well, I think well, one, there has to be dialogue. As Bre'Asia was saying, like when she's in spaces with adults, how she gets bypassed, she gets passed over as if she doesn't have any value as far as like her knowledge and things like that, which I think is ridiculous. I think it's the passion of our youth that have always led the fight in injustice, especially specifically social justice, racial justice. It's always been the youth that have led us in the right direction. And so I think we can't forget that, and we need to center that. But I also think it's really important that we hear from older adults as well, especially those are currently, like, our big push is divestment, is specifically, our pension plans. And so I think it's really important that we hear from the older adults as well, who are possibly collecting a pension now, or will be collecting one in the very near future. The fact that they have value, because I think sometimes the fear is, well, we don't want to lose our money. We're afraid. People, we tend to live in fear. And I think it's the fear, no matter what age, it's that fear that keeps us from doing the right thing a lot of times. And I think if we bridge those gaps and we educate each other, we do forums like this where we're learning and growing from each other, I think that's going to be the key. And just because I think a lot of times people don't even realize what is happening and the impact that it has. They just go about their regular lives and they live like in a little silo and everything is fine. And I think that the more that we educate the masses, the more people will join in this movement.
I'm just gonna go ahead and jump in. Connecting to what Denisha said, actually, yeah, I agree with her a lot because I actually somehow met her on my own CTA trip. And I remembered her because she said, I was in the meeting, I was in a caucus, and I was bringing up the argument that you won't lose money. If anything, you'll gain more money as you divest fossil fuels. And pretty much 99.9% of the room kind of like ignored what I said and like still had attitude about it. But Denisha actually stood up and she was like, yeah, no, you're right. And like, we should actually look into it. So I really appreciated her for that. But going back to the question, I feel like it's going to take people, it's going to take a lot of things. I think the main two for me is people need to stop being so selfish. Not everything in the world is about money. People kind of fail to realize that without money or without a world, you don't really have money. If you're not alive, you don't have money. And a lot of people kind of don't realize that a lot of different, if you were to divest into something else, it's going to do better for you than what you're doing now. Because if you think about it, a lot of stuff is already going to be like on the more like earth healthy. I don't know the word for it right now, I'm blanking. But like the more sustainable side of things rather than fossil fuels. Like we already have self-driving cars. So okay, cool. That takes care of one issue. We have electric stoves. That takes care of another issue. And I think a lot of people aren't thinking about the health of their students. Because me, I work with kids as well. And even though I'm a student myself, I also teach other students. I do a lot. I like to be involved. And so for me, I teach students with disabilities. And it's really kind of bothering me a lot when I go to teach my babies. And a lot of them either probably can't breathe that day because they have stuff going on, they have medical conditions to where sometimes if they have asthma, we go outside and it's like a little bit cloudy or gassy, then of course that ruins the fun for them. And so I think it's very important that people think about other people. It's not all about the money. You'll be getting a lot more money. And I think one thing to bridge it all together is if we actually took a step back and realized, okay, I'm 17, cool, but I might have a lot more knowledge than you think I do. I'm not slow. I'm not, stupid, nothing like that. I'm very intelligent, especially for my age. Everybody in my group, everybody in YVA, both YVA and Foster for California, we know a lot of what we're doing. We spent years researching, meeting, planning. We know what we're talking about. We're not new to this. We know exactly what we're talking about. And so we go to these meetings, we're not trying to knock people down. We're just trying to let people know that, hey, things need to change soon. Otherwise, we're all going to be stuck. And so I think if people just put the money part to the side of things and actually realize like about other people's care and and health and things like that, then I think eventually one day, maybe they'll come to their senses and they'll be like, okay, you know what, we're in this with you. And I'm really happy and grateful that we have Denisha and Jenn and Louise who actually listened to what YVA had to say and now they're standing with us. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I'll jump in. I just want to say thank you to YVA, Youth versus Apocalypse. I learned about my pension from you in 2016, 2017. I learned it from you. I went to one of your protests. I went on your webpage, and there it was. My pension, CalSTRS, was investing all this money in fossil fuel. And then I learned about Fossil Free California from you, too. So thank you, Youth versus Apocalypse. And it really, as elders, we need to listen to young people. We need to support young people to take the lead. We can stand side by side in the struggle for environmental justice. And I just feel like we can really learn from each other. And I think there's a lot of wisdom that comes from people across the ages that if we can share, and that's why I'm so committed to collaborative leadership, or even to really letting the youth lead. I want to stand side by side with you in this struggle for environmental justice, and I will take your lead, and hopefully you'll hear my needs and voice my ideas as well and learn from me. But I can take your lead because you are absolutely energetic and wise and ready to take the lead. And it really makes me very happy. And so just know that I'm right there. And, as elders, we have the time and we can have, we can drive cars, we can do other things to get people places. We can do what's needed. And I think that's another important thing, is to voice our needs. Voice our needs. Because sometimes I need you to slow down and speak up because I'm hard of hearing. And sometimes, you need me to shut up so that you have room to talk. And so we got to do both. We got to just really voice our needs and work collaboratively, work as a community. It is our world. It is our world. And it's our environment. It is all about divesting.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. I am in 100% agreement with everything that y'all are saying. When I was a lot younger, when I was in high school, and again, when I was in CB's youth program, we started our meetings with community agreements like respecting folks' pronouns. There was one that was called Don't Yuck My Yum, which I think is essentially the equivalent to Don't Rain on My Parade or something like that. And one that I think kind of is informing my answer to this question is make space, take space. And I think that that is something that everyone in this panel is already saying, is that there's going to be context for folks of the elder generation to make space for those of us in my generation and Bre'Asia's generation to really lead some of the conversations in regards to the fossil fuel pollution within our communities that has been impacting the health of our community members for decades. And then there's going to be contexts where I need to make space, where I'm organizing with labor unions in fossil free California, and there's folks who want to support the campaign but who are genuinely concerned about their retirement funds. And that is, for me, an opportunity to make space and to listen to concerns, because that is really, from my perspective, that is really how we're going to continue to build an intersectional and an intergenerational environmental justice movement, is essentially allowing ourselves to make space and take space. And yeah, it's really amazing for me to be in spaces with Youth versus Apocalypse and to see what Bre'Asia is talking about, where she just mentioned earlier, like, I know what I'm talking about. And that is something that I definitely try to help younger folks in YVA understand, is that you are an expert of your community, and don't let anyone tell you that you don't know what you're talking about or that you don't have a space, because that is not true. You do know the fossil fuel pollutants in your neighborhood. You do know about the many impacts that your residents are subjected to in your neighborhoods. You do know those things, and as a result, you are a community expert due to your lived experience. You have all of that knowledge just from lived experience alone, and that does make you a community expert. And I also think, there's also different roles for folks in regards to different generations. Like, we have teams within our organization that works primarily on getting labor unions on board with the divestment campaign. We have other teams where we engage more with retired folks who are already receiving pensions. And then we have other contexts where we work very, very close with Youth versus Apocalypse. And through those different spaces, there are different avenues of pressure for CalPERS and CalSTRS to divest from fossil fuels. One space might include doing letter writing. One space might include going to CTA state councils with Bre'Asia and Denisha and the other YVA folks. And then one space might include going to a CalPERS board meeting and demand that they divest from fossil fuels. And so I really see these different spaces also as different avenues of pressure and for momentum for our campaign.
I really love that. One thing I have been thinking about recently, and I know I'm not a panelist, but I will just put my thought in here, is that I think sometimes when adults and older people are really focusing on staying within a certain norm that has been set, or acting in a certain way where they do not get in trouble for their actions or don't rock the boat. In that way, youth can have a little more leeway, I think, to do something like stage a protest in front of a elected official's office, because that is one example of youth getting involved in politics. Whereas if adults did that, that might be seen as, oh, these are people who are causing, they're causing a ruckus. They don't know what's going on. Do y'all agree with that at all?
Can you repeat that, please, for me, Manjari?
Yeah, I guess my question is, do you agree that youth have a little more leeway in the activism that they do, because they can fall back on, not having the professional obligations or obligations to carry themselves in a certain way because they're youth?
I agree with you, but I also disagree with you, only because, like, coming from a youth who has so many different roles and things, sometimes I do have to put on a professional act, and sometimes I don't have the room to fall back. But then there's other youth who are not below me, but are stepping up towards me, who do not have the professional like room or anything like that. So they do have the ability to fall back, which whether it's on me, on Marilyn, or some other people that I work with. So I agree and disagree, just depending on how major a youth is taking something, like how serious they're taking it and like what role they have. But overall, I think what you're saying is like 100% relatable. I definitely get it. And before I was even at my professional role, I definitely had the leeway to fall back. And so I definitely may have abused it a little bit, but we're not going to talk about that. But I definitely took the advantage of it. And now I kind of have to take the advantage of other people. So yeah, I get you.
And I also think that us elders have not as much to risk either, and that we can step up. We can step up to demonstrations. We can step up to protect young people. I know sometimes they're the security guards working with YVA, that we can go in. I know I've stood around banks and held hands and just faced, arrest, because I don't have my job anymore. I have my pension, and I can afford to do that. So I think that elders need to step up as well. We need to step together. I know 1,000 Grandmothers do lots of different, third act, and just different people stand together. And may we do that in fossil free California as well.
Yeah, that's great. I think what I'm hearing is that the stakes are high for all of us, and we all need to get involved despite differences in age or race or whatever, class. Yeah, it's interesting to think about. So would y'all say that different generations have explicitly different roles in this movement?
If I could jump in, I think it's contextual. I think if there's folks who are worried that they might lose their job, I think that there's still a space for them in organizing. I think that whether that be within their union or whether that be uh, through other tactics, I still think that there's opportunities for folks to get engaged with the work, or at the very least support the work. And like a lot of fossil free California's members are retired folks, and we've been at CalPERS board meetings. We've rallied in front of the CalPERS building. We've done a lot of actions where retired folks are really throwing down for fossil fuel divestment, are really getting their hands dirty. And I saw a comment in the chat that I agree that youth don't necessarily have more leeway either, as demonstrated by the brutality that they see when they exercise their First Amendment rights in regards to pro ceasefire protests, and even other historical protests regarding environmental justice or racial justice or, against police brutality, young folks have always been, unfortunately, subjected to backlash from the police and from media when it's time to protest, when it's time to rally, when it's time to make some good noise and some good trouble. And so, yeah, I think it's contextual. I think I'm more on the side of no, youth don't have more leeway. And I think that there's a role, I think that there's a space for everyone in environmental justice movement and divestment movement as well.
I don't know if I can add to that. I think we all have to play our role. We all have to, again, going back to that, having the dialogue and those conversations with our peers and spreading awareness. I think that's the key. Like, and as Louise was saying, no, the youth do not get a pass. We know that, unfortunately. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us to think we all share the same responsibility. And I think that we all should share the same burden as well when it comes to doing what's right.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. We have a little bit more time. Does anybody else want to chime in with their thoughts about what it is going to take to create a truly intersectional and multi-generational successful environmental justice movement?
I had a thought that I wanted to throw in. Whenever Louise was talking about how everybody has a role, it made me think that yeah, everybody does have a role, and I feel like when I do my CTA meetings, I feel like maybe people might listen if they understand that, okay, you don't have to agree with what I'm saying, but you can support me by at least giving me information that you have, and maybe I'll learn a thing or two about what I'm doing. Give me some more stuff to research. I feel like if a lot of people don't come off as mad, because I've gotten into a lot of arguments with older people just trying to get the word around. I haven't asked them to do anything, just trying to talk, and I've gotten into a lot of arguments with people. I think if they stop coming off so aggressively and actually just like, we could have a dispute about it. Like you could tell me your ideas and thoughts and, maybe you might be right. Maybe I have to, actually go do my research on that and get back to you, I could apologize for that. But when people just come at you aggressively, it's like, whoa, I'm not even asking you to do nothing. I'm just trying to, spread information around. So I think if a lot of people could get past that, I'm trying to attack them and actually learn that I'm trying to just educate you and maybe you can educate me too. 'Cause I don't know everything, don't nobody know anything. I don't know everything. So I think if people could just, learn that I'm not trying to attack you any type of way. I'm not trying to get you fired. I'm not trying to take none of your money. I don't need your money. I'm okay. Like just trying to get the level that we could not be friends, but we could work as one. We could work as a group. We can move as a group, even if you're not 100% agreeing to what I'm saying. I think that can definitely eventually help the movement that we are all trying to create.
I agree. And I just think that we need to also evaluate different things, like when we've been at a protest together, if we've been in a meeting together, to say, okay, what went well? What didn't go so well? Who was allowed to step up and speak? And I know a lot as a white middle class woman that I need to step back so that more people of color, young people, can speak up. And if we evaluate every meeting, what I learned through all the years of co-creating communities of belonging is that after every meeting, after every group, okay, what went well? Who got to speak? Did everybody get to speak? What can we do differently next time? How can we make this work? That the process, the journey is as important as the outcome, but we need to evaluate that. And I've heard that a lot of the meetings that happened, that there was a lot of friction and that there was no way to talk with everyone. How could we have done it differently? And then we all learn together. I think that's really important.
I'll just add one other thing. Going back to what Bre'Asia was saying as far as state council, and I'm seeing with Paula in the chat who was referring to, the unions taking a bigger and broader stance in divestment. I can definitely say, like, being in the so CTA is the California Teachers Association, and it's our state affiliate for California, one of them. And I can definitely state that, I could see the movement. I could see the movement from when Youth versus Apocalypse first started showing up. Like doors were just slammed, like literally slammed in their face. There was so much animosity and like I can't even think of the word, but the way our youth were treated, it was embarrassing as a member of that council. But I could definitely see with, change is hard and change can sometimes be slow, but I can definitely see from the beginning when they first started showing up to when there really started being movement. And even like up to the point where, I mean, there's plenty of unions that have signed on to support divestment, and we're almost there. I'm confident that if it comes to the floor again, it will pass. But it just goes to show the movement how, the youth can't do it alone, the adults can't do it alone. Like it's a collaborative effort, and I think we always have to remember that.
I have loved all of these answers so much. And this is a big question, It's like we could go on and on. We need a few more panels to talk about everything that we want to share tonight. But I think the three biggest things that I am hearing from y'all is, in order to create a truly intersectional and multi-generational successful environmental justice movement, we need to make real space for different opinions and to have public forum and discussion on that. And we need to kind of, sometimes set aside our own egos and make room for different thoughts that we have not heard before, and perhaps lean into conflict sometimes. That is something that we avoid, especially as, social media discourse has cropped up where somebody comments something on Facebook and then somebody else just completely insults the whole life and the whole family of the person who made the initial comment. It's like, that is not discourse. And that type of conflict is not helpful at all. You're just coming after somebody's life for no reason. But to really make space for different thoughts, and if there is an argument that comes up, you should be able to discuss that and talk through that in a civil way. And then I think another thing that I heard is we really need to evaluate how our meetings and how our actions are going after they happen, so that we can make concrete plans of action for the next thing. And I think that is a huge, huge thing that we need to do. And that's a huge thing that I need to do as a comms person. It's sort of like, I think comms and broader divestment coalition organizing are very similar in that there are always so many things that we need to get done that we often jump from one thing to the other without taking a minute to evaluate and celebrate the action that just happened, all of the work that we just did, all of the things that we just learned, all of the results that we just got. So I loved that. Thank you, everybody, for your answers. Now I would like to move on to more personal questions so we can flesh out a little bit of the question of how. So we answered the question of what is it going to take? So all of these things, I would love to know a little more about how we're going to implement these things that we just said. And so I'm curious, let's start with Jenn. So you have 76 years of experience in organizing for a better world. And you also have done it while looking great, and you still continue to climb mountains after all this time. So I wouldn't be able to tell that it has been 76 years just from one glance. I need you to email me your secrets after this call. But that's not my question for you. My question for you is, how did you learn to develop strong collaborative leadership skills?
Well, thank you for the question, Manjari. It has been over 50 years of doing that. And the very first Earth Day in 1970, I co-created with students and faculty the first environmental community, where men and women lived on the same floor of the dorms the first time, and we invited faculty and their families to live with us. And so we learned together an interdisciplinary approach to the environmental crisis. But one thing I learned there, I was an advisor for a part of that time, and when I took off my advisor hat and became a real member of the community, then community became the counselor. We learned that community could give advice, could help us in different situations, could give a perspective. And then let's see, I also at City College of San Francisco, I co-chaired with a student the Women's Leadership Task Force, and there we worked together as administrators, as teachers, as staff, and as students, all equal. And we put on the first teach-in for a sexual harassment-free campus in the state of California. So when you work and you don't put one group above another, but you work collaboratively, that can happen. I learned to develop an inclusive agenda, not just my agenda. No, I had to outreach to every club I worked with, every student government person I worked with. What are your items for the agenda? How can we make this co-creative? And but I also, really learned to step back, as I said before, as a white middle-class woman, and to really make space and make room and learn from people of color, that it is so important, and younger people and people all across the spectrum from different life experiences. How do we learn together? How do we listen? And for, kind of thinking that we can always be out there in front, no, we need to listen and to really also learn when we make mistakes, when we treat others with disrespect, to learn to really take in the impact of what happened. Not just say, I'm sorry. No, take in the impact of what happened and resolve to learn, and also return to our true kind of wholesome nature, so that we don't bring white guilt in the room. White guilt doesn't help anybody. So we have to really just bring our humility and really work together. And then I think I've talked about the other things already, voicing our needs, after every meeting, summing it up, and just really co-creating agendas, all those things. And to think that collaboration is much wiser, much more relevant, and will work a lot better than just me or just one or two people. That collaboration brings all the ideas together and really allows us to move forward. I'll put my 2-pager, or Miriam will put the 2-pager collaborative leadership, what is it and how do we cultivate it, in the chat. It's been used across the country because I've had 50 years of experiencing it, and it's just really important that we really live it.
Thank you, Jen. That was beautiful. And I really appreciate your vulnerability in all of the answers that you give. So we have 3 questions left. I want to jump to Bre'Asia. Now that we have had our elder in the room speak, I want to hear from the very youngest in our room. So Bre'Asia, you're 17 years old and you are fervently fighting against a set of norms and standards and decisions that were made without you a long time ago, but still affect you today. How do you establish credibility as an organizer when you're so young and fighting against all of these, formidable things?
I just want to make sure that I completely answer your question off fullness. Could you repeat it, but like in a more condensed way?
Totally, yeah. So the crux of your question is, you are 17. How do you establish credibility as somebody who is so young and facing, old rules?
Okay, so I feel like I don't know. It's a really good question. Kind of got me there. I feel like to build trust first, I feel like I had to eventually make connection with the people that I talk to. It's like with the CTA meetings and then behind the scenes with the students that I help organize and coordinate with. I think that I have to be truthful for one. So make sure that when I am talking, I'm feeding them nothing but straight facts that I've went and collected from not just the internet, but just from my own resources and studies that I've done. Like, for example, one study that I did was over the course of 2 days. I sat outside right where Oakland Airport is, and I counted how many diesel trucks went by. And I did that like all day long. It was very hot that day too. So I'm very dedicated to what I do. But I try to be 100% honest. I try to be 100% open, especially when I'm getting feedback. I don't really take the feedback and like get mad at it or jump at it. I kind of take it, listen to it, and then build on from it. That way I could be a better me. Because I feel like if people can't trust you, people can't actually understand you, then it doesn't really help what you're fighting for. Um, I wanted to reach back to what Denisha said a few questions ago. She mentioned that at one point doors were getting slammed in our face, and I wanted to mention that at one point we weren't even allowed to be on the carpet where the voting happened. We were always forced back to our hotel rooms, of course, before I was in there, but for my peers, they were forced back to the hotel rooms. They couldn't be on the carpet, they couldn't go to the voting, they couldn't talk to people, anything. And I'm pretty sure that went on for a couple of meetings, which meant like every couple months, whatever, it kept happening. And I think that being persistent is a big thing because we kept going back no matter what. Even after we were allowed in caucuses, we still kept going back no matter how many people ignored us or pushed us out or didn't give us time to speak. We made a way. So I feel like if you really have something that you believe in, that you really want to change, you have to be consistent about it and persistent about it and be determined. And I wanted to recognize that whenever our bill got pulled, a lot of our people cried. And I don't want to say it's a good thing, but I really love the fact that people are so passionate about the bill that they were like, dang, like all that hard work and went to nothing. But a lot of our people also realized that this is just a step back for a major comeback. And so now that we're going worldwide, I think the next time the bill will be brought up again, we will for surely have a lot more support. And I'm hoping with this panel, a lot of the other people in here would kind of spread to their peers, let them know that some young people and older people as well know what they're talking about, that we should actually lay the issue out on the table and kind of look at it piece by piece and try to figure out what are some roads that other people could pick up on and so forth. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think that answers the question. It's persistence and really, really asserting yourself and believing in yourself, saying, I know what I'm talking about, and you should listen to me because I care so much. I wouldn't be here if I didn't care. So thank you, Bre'Asia. The next question I have is for Denisha. So as a teacher, you are kind of a community liaison for many different people with different backgrounds, including age. Tell me about some avenues on the community level where we might be able to focus on, regardless of our age, and see results toward divestment.
Well, first and foremost, going back to the union, the work done in our union, we established an organization. It's called the California Alliance for Community Schools, and it was established back in, I think, 2012. So it's been around for a long time. And the whole idea is we have locals all throughout the state of California. So all the way up from, we have Oakland Unified, Richmond, Sacramento, San Francisco, all the way down to San Diego and Anaheim. And then of course we have the Central Valley like Fresno and San Jose. But we've come together to understand that what's happening in Los Angeles County is also happening way up north and way down south. And so, and as well as the central. So we came together to understand that we have common needs and common issues. And the fight's centered around community schools, which is a fantastic hub. Basically what it is it brings the community back to schools, back to the schools. And so with community schools, it's a model where we actively engage the parents and the community surrounding and within that school community to engage in not just, you know, the health and welfare of their student while they're at school, but we also address issues that are happening outside the school in those communities. And so this is the perfect opportunity, the perfect vehicle to one, spread awareness as we're having these conversations and engaging, and essentially we're empowering parents and community members to be activists or to be organizers or just to speak up and to speak out, to acknowledge that they have a voice and not just to be talked at, but actually collaborative with. And so in this model, like I know in United Teachers Los Angeles, starting in 2019, we started fighting for things called common good. And what those common good demands are is we actually in our contract, instead of just fighting for like salary and benefits and healthcare, things like that, we also include things that impact our students and our parents and those communities that are surrounding. And so with our alliance, which currently it's like 13 locals right now, we're actually expanding our demand for common goods throughout the state. And we all believe, like a lot of our, if not all of our locals that have signed on, also were the same ones that signed on for the divestment or SB 252. So there's great work that we foresee as we're building power and we're organizing together to really, really push this movement as we continue to build. So I'm excited that I'm part of a union that actively engages in climate justice and environmental issues. And so to be able to bring our parents and community members in, that is how we're going to really foresee change.
I really love that, Denisha. Joni asked if the name of your statewide movement could be put in the chat. And I see that we're a little over time. I do have one more question that I want to ask Luis. So if folks need to hop off, that's totally okay. We can always send you a recording, but if everybody else could please stay and hear Luis's thoughts. I want to hear from you, Luis. What are some other avenues where we can put pressure and see change? So Denisha talked about community schools and bolstering connections with labor unions. I'm wondering, what are the other avenues?
Yeah, so I definitely agree with everything Denisha was talking about. I think especially with this divestment campaign, it's really multifaceted. I think this panel is like a huge example of how multifaceted it is, right? There's Denisha, who is a teacher that's unionized under UTLA, Jenn, who is a retired pensioner, Bre'Asia, who's a student, and myself, who is a grassroots community organizer. There's so many components to this campaign, and there's so many tools that we have in our arsenal. We've talked a lot about Senate Bill 252 and at the work that we did in regards to trying to get an endorsement from the CTA. And I want to remind us that legislation is just one tool in our toolbox, right? That bill that we were fighting so hard to get through the state legislature and unfortunately didn't get through, that doesn't mean the fight's over. That's just one tool in the toolbox. The fight ends once you like give up and once you stop wanting to do this. That's when really fossil fuels have won. That's when the polluter has won. And that's not the game that we're playing. We're not playing to have the polluters win. We're playing for working class communities who have been on the front lines of pollution for decades to win. And so I believe that there's a lot of power in working class communities that are in the front lines of fossil fuel pollution. There's a lot of power there. My community of Wilmington is heavily unionized by UTLA as well. And there's a lot of teachers in the high schools and elementary schools and the middle schools that I went to that don't know that their retirement funds are funding the same industries that's polluting the neighborhood where many of them are from. Many of my teachers that I grew up taking classes with are from Wilmington. A lot of them don't know that their pensions are funding the demise of the planet. And a lot of them don't know that their pensions are funding the same industry that's polluting their neighborhood where they live and where they teach in and where their students live in. And so I think that there's a lot of power within the community in regards to pressure, whether that be local city pressure or state pressure. Again, building more alliances with unions whose influence really matters and continuing to coalition build with other communities throughout the state, other organizations that do environmental justice work, and unions that we really, really need on board in this fight. And I'll go ahead and kick it back to you. And your dog is so cute, Bre'Asia.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Luis, and thank you so much to our panelists this evening. We're a little over time, so I will end it here, but watch out for a recap email with a survey. And, if you all have any questions for these panelists, you can definitely email me and I will relay those questions to them. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday and rest of your week.
Thanks.